India. What will come next in this spiral of violence, and will it affect Bangladesh's upcoming election? We'll bring you the full story tonight. Also on the show, why are gold prices soaring again? Why Vivek Ramaswamy has finally woken up to anti-India racism, and why Japan is restarting its largest nuclear plant. That too after 15 years. Meanwhile, Pakistan's Asim Munir is crediting divine intervention for his so-called victory over India. And finally, a special report on the most viral moments of 2025. All this and more lined up for you. The headlines first.
Cambodia accuses Thailand of launching airstrikes on its territory shortly after Bangkok announced the two nations had agreed to hold talks this week aimed at halting the deadly border clashes. Renewed fighting this month, which shattered a previous truce, has killed at least 23 people in Thailand and 20 in Cambodia and displaced nearly 1 million people on both sides. China's Vantage gets temporary relief, wins last-minute support from creditors to extend a bond grace period which will help it avoid a default. But Vantage's proposal for a one-year repayment extension was again rejected. Vantage is one of China's biggest residential property developers. They have time till the end of January to rework the terms of their repayment. Denmark says it will summon the US ambassador after President Donald Trump announced he had appointed a special envoy to Greenland, the Danish autonomous territory he has threatened to annex. Copenhagen has asked Washington to respect its sovereignty over the resource-rich island. Clashes break out near Uvira in the Democratic Republic of Congo between the M23 group and pro-government militia. This comes days after the M23 vowed to withdraw from the city. The Rwanda-backed M23 militia had seized the strategic city near the border with Burundi earlier this month. And Italy's competition authority fines US tech giant Apple $115 million for allegedly abusing its dominant position in the mobile app market. Apple has said that it will appeal the decision. Earlier this year, French antitrust authorities had handed Apple a similar fine over its app tracking privacy feature.
Bangladesh remains on a knife edge. The street violence has ended for now, but there is fear across the country, the fear of another flare-up. It all began with the death of a Bangladeshi student leader, a radical named Osman Hadi. He was shot outside a mosque earlier this month, and last week he succumbed to his injuries. On Saturday, his funeral was organized in Dhaka. Tens of thousands of people attended. It's frankly astounding. Foreign missions are mourning Hadi. Interim leader Muhammad Yunus attended his funeral. Political parties are lionizing him, almost making Osman Hadi seem like a national hero. Except his politics was extremist. His supporters torched media houses last week. They destroyed the home of Bangladesh's founder Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, and Hadi himself propagated violence against India. Yet, huge crowds are mourning him. It tells you how much Bangladesh has changed. And this mourning could easily turn into more violence. Hadi's group issued an ultimatum on Saturday. They gave the interim government 24 hours to find Hadi's killers. And if they failed, well, more protests and violence. It's been 2 days since that ultimatum, and Bangladesh police are yet to arrest the gunman. He's been identified as Faisal Karim Masud. The police have no idea about his current location. Some of Hadi's supporters say that he fled to India. He crossed the border and went to India. The police have rejected that claim, but it won't help beyond a point, because if they're unable to find this man, the violence could restart. In fact, Hadi's group issued a warning today. They threatened to oust the interim regime if justice is not delivered. So things are escalating very fast. We have gone from manhunt to regime change in 3 days. And to make matters worse, there's been another shooting. Again, a radical student leader was targeted. His name was Motaleb Shikder. Earlier today, he too was killed by masked gunmen. Now, Shikder was a leader in the NCP, the National Citizen Party of Bangladesh. And like Hadi, they too promote radical Islamist ideas. The same NCP also had talked about isolating India's northeast. So chances are this shooting will also stir the pot. And all of this makes one thing clear. The interim regime has lost the plot because it's not just political violence that is growing. Communal violence is also an issue. Last week, a Hindu man was lynched by a mob. His body was tied to a tree and burnt. Now, the interim regime did condemn the attack, but as usual, they have an excuse.
Countries in this region are no stranger to incidents like this, and action should be taken against it. Bangladesh has taken immediate action.
This seems to be Bangladesh's strategy. Whataboutery. Just consider last week's violence. Radical groups had targeted Indian diplomatic missions in Bangladesh, and this triggered a response in New Delhi. Some 20 protesters gathered outside the Bangladeshi High Commission. They protested the lynching across the border. No violence, no chaos, just a normal democratic gathering. But Dhaka is drawing parallels. They're comparing the protest in New Delhi to the bloodlust in Dhaka. And India is having none of it. Because look at the Indian statement. I'm quoting, "We have noted misleading propaganda in sections of the Bangladesh media on the incident. There was no attempt to breach the fence or create a security situation at any time. Our officials remain in touch with Bangladesh authorities and have conveyed to them our strong concerns at the attacks on minorities." So India has set the record straight. It also asked Dhaka to protect Bangladeshi minorities. The question is, will the interim regime do anything about it? Frankly, their position is confusing. Are they powerless to stop this rising violence? Or are they complicit in this unrest? If you ask former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, the answer is clear. She's given another interview amid this unrest. And Hasina says the Islamists are the real power in Dhaka. They're using Yunus to project a softer image globally. After all, he's a darling in the activism circles. But behind the scenes, Sheikh Hasina says behind the scenes, these Islamists are radicalizing Bangladeshi institutions, and that is a worry right now. Because in February, Bangladesh will be heading to polls. What if the election body is hijacked by these elements? Or the law enforcement agencies? We could see a stage-managed election. The poll body is aware of these concerns. They tried to send a stern message earlier today. They told police officers, do not be kind to poll disruptors. Basically, if someone meddles, crack down hard. But I'm afraid such statements won't cut it. Yunus and company had 16 months to stabilize Bangladesh, to re-establish law and order. Instead, what did he focus on? Sheikh Hasina. Yunus freed radicals jailed by the Hasina government. He lifted the ban on the Jamaat-e-Islami and he cultivated leaders like Osman Hadi. Now it's all coming back to haunt him. And you can't deny the irony of what's happening. The radicals ousted Hasina and installed Yunus. In exchange, Yunus shielded the radicals, and now those very same radicals are challenging Muhammad Yunus. As the election draws closer, things will heat up even more. This chapter of Bangladesh's story is far from over. $2025 has been a year of uncertainty, and it seems 2026 will be more of the same. Gold prices are surging again. They have crossed $4,400 for an ounce. 1 ounce is around 28 grams. So 28 grams of gold is now selling for $4,400 in the international market. And that's a record, a new record. Here in India too, gold prices rose today. They followed the global surge. And this comes after a brief dip last week when the rupee strengthened against the US dollar. The momentum has not slowed. The prices could rise further. Gold is now on track for its best yearly performance since 1979. So what is driving this rally? There are multiple reasons. Each one points towards greater risk. Let's break it down for you. The first factor is the US Federal Reserve. That's the American Central Bank. It is expected to cut interest rates at least twice in the coming year. 2 rate cuts in 2026 is what the markets expect. And when interest rates go down, metals like gold become more attractive. Their demand goes up. That's because investors consider gold as a better investment, something that can deliver better returns than your money in the bank. So investors are getting in early. That's one reason why gold is getting more expensive. The second factor is rising geopolitical risk. The conflict in Ukraine is likely to carry on. American and Russian officials met over the weekend in Miami, but there is no consensus over a peace deal. And that's not the only conflict that is fueling chaos. The oil blockade on Venezuela is also intensifying. The US has struck over 24 boats there. There is growing risk of a full-blown military conflict breaking out. In fact, US President Donald Trump has not ruled out such a scenario, and that has unsettled investors further. In such uncertain times, they tend to rush to safe havens, and gold is the oldest one, the oldest safe haven. It is attracting not just investors, but also central banks. Central banks are also doubling down on gold, and that's the third reason for the price surge. Central banks are buying more gold than ever. Let me show you some data from September this year. Across the world, central banks hold 36,000 tons of gold. 36,000 tons of gold. In fact, gold has become the world's second largest reserve asset. Earlier, the euro held this position. The dollar still remains the number one asset, but gold has dethroned the euro to take the second spot. Central banks have been adding to their gold holdings. For 3 straight years, they have been buying more gold. More than 1,000 metric tons every year. That's twice the pace compared to the last decade, and the highest on record. India's RBI has also been beefing up its gold reserves. RBI is the Reserve Bank of India, that's the Indian Central Bank. In September, the RBI's reserves crossed 880 metric tons. This was an all-time high. And with central banks buying so much gold, prices are likely to remain high. So these 3 trends, the Fed's interest rate cuts that are expected, growing geopolitical risks, and buying by central banks, these 3 factors are inflating gold prices. What is the projection for 2026? Goldman Sachs says the prices will keep rising. They predict gold will touch $4,900 per ounce. Right now it's $4,400. It is projected to touch $4,900 per ounce. That's about 11% higher than the current levels. And there's another warning sign here. It's not just gold. Prices of other metals are also rising, stuff like silver, palladium and platinum. They're also getting more expensive. And when all precious metals rise together, it usually means only one thing. Investors are preparing for more uncertainty. This gold rally is being driven by fear and instability. Where interest rates are falling, conflicts are expanding and currencies are under stress. Gold may not pay interest like bank deposits, but its value does not go down. It does not lose value. And that's what people are betting on. So rising gold prices are not a sign of strength. They are a sign of risk. Investors buy gold when times are risky. And right now they're buying a lot of it. You can wake up someone who's asleep. But what about someone who's pretending to sleep? That's the story of Vivek Ramaswamy. At one point, he was the darling of the MAGA camp. That's Make America Great Again, MAGA. It's the political movement led by US President Donald Trump. At first, Vivek Ramaswamy embraced the MAGA identity. He loved the cheers and the love. But then came the hate. Hardcore MAGA attacked Ramaswamy's Indian ethnicity. They questioned his Hindu faith. They challenged his birthright citizenship. And why just him? MAGA even targeted Vice President J.D. Vance's wife, Usha Vance. They also abused Indian immigrants and naturalized citizens. So last week, Vivek Ramaswamy pushed back. He spoke at a conservative political event on Friday. Listen to what he said.
If you believe in normalizing hatred towards any ethnic group, toward whites, towards blacks, towards Hispanics, towards Jews, towards Indians, you have no place in the future of the conservative movement. If you call Usha Vance the Second Lady of the United States of America, Ajit, you have no place in the future of the conservative movement.
Brave words there, and frankly, some of it is reasonable. Nobody should think that Adolf Hitler was cool, nobody should spread hatred based on skin color, and nobody should name-call Usha Vance. This is not some radical thinking, this is basic human decency. I don't know what reaction Ramaswamy was expecting, but here's what he actually got. More hate. Some MAGA supporters asked Ramaswamy to leave the US, some simply said thumbs down, and some asked him to repair their laptop, which is a lazy, racist joke on Indian technicians. In fact, one comment probably summed it up best. It said that Hitler lovers and racists do have a place in MAGA, but Vivek Ramaswamy may not. Now, this raises two crucial questions. One, why did Vivek Ramaswamy speak out now? And two, what does this episode say about American politics? Ramaswamy is running for governor of Ohio. It's a Republican-leaning state. Ohio has elected a Republican governor since the year 2006, but this time that could change. Some polls show Ramaswamy's Democratic rival defeating him. And this is despite an endorsement from Donald Trump. Yet Ramaswamy chose to speak out. You see, Trump's MAGA camp is moving further to the right. Many of its top ideologues are hardline conservatives. For example, Vice President J.D. Vance. He publicly suggested that his wife should convert to Christianity. When she was attacked by MAGA, he stood by in silence, no statement, no criticism. And Ramaswamy was brave enough to challenge that. Let me quote one of his remarks. If you don't have the guts to call out this hate without stuttering, then you have no place as a leader in this movement. This is being seen as a jibe at Vance. If true, that is very brave. Ramaswamy is already facing an uphill battle in Ohio. His remarks could alienate hardline MAGA voters. I'm sure his advisors warned him about that risk, and yet he chose to speak out. Kudos for that. But here's the problem. Why are you realizing all of this now? MAGA's far-right camp was never a secret. Trump knew about it. We knew about it. Everyone knew about it. In fact, this camp has targeted Ramaswamy before. In 2024, he was constantly attacked on the campaign trail. His religion was called demonic and pagan. Where was the outrage back then? Where was the strong language and criticism? The fact is, Vivek Ramaswamy is playing the politics of convenience. In 2024, it was convenient for him to ignore the racism. But in 2025, it is not. Maybe he is hoping to win over neutral voters with such remarks. Whatever the motive, it is coming too late. As a prominent politician, Ramaswamy had a great platform. He could have defended Indian Americans. He could have fought back against the racism. Instead, he watched it fester. And why just Vivek Ramaswamy? FBI Director Kash Patel is another example. So is former US presidential candidate Nikki Haley. All of them have been victims of anti-India hatred online, yet none of them have spoken out. I hope this is a lesson for everyone out there. Here in India, we celebrate Indian origin leaders and artists. We feel proud when they succeed. But those same people are hiding that identity. They are pretending that everything is fine. Which brings me back to the sleep analogy. Vivek Ramaswamy appears to have finally stopped pretending to sleep. Will others follow? Is the question.
This is News 18 Network. India's largest news network.
This is in Dhaka, viewers. Chittagong is where they shut it down, but this is Dhaka, the capital of Bangladesh. I don't know what's going on. In London, extremist elements, separatists from the Khalistani cause routinely picket the Indian High Commission there. In Canada, again Khalistani separatists and all sorts of other anti-India forces gather on the streets and take out tableaus, threatening to hang the Prime Minister and so on and so forth. But what do we do about it? Imagine, viewers, and it has happened in the past when Iran, in 1979, viewers, peak of the revolution, when American diplomats were held to ransom virtually. It has happened in Benghazi, where an American consulate was attacked. The Americans flew in, forces, rescued their people, brought them out.
Against India, that's already in the making. In a CNN News 18 exclusive news break, we've learned that Bangladesh is eyeing a Saudi-style pact with Pakistan. So Pakistan and Bangladesh will be working on mutual defense agreement. The proposal has already been discussed at top diplomatic military levels. Joint mechanism has been formed to draft agreement as Dhaka's military is keen on a strategic defense pact. Multiple rounds of military-level talks have been held, and Army, Air Force, Navy chiefs of both nations have met repeatedly. Several military MOUs have already been signed. The draft is likely after Bangladesh general elections to be taking place. Now, this entire reset in ties is taking place rapidly after Sheikh Hasina's ouster. We are also learning that Pakistan is in talks with 8 countries on similar pacts. What bearing will this have on New Delhi? Let's deep dive, and for that, let me introduce my guests today. I'm joined in by Ambassador Veena Sikri, who's a former Indian High Commissioner to Bangladesh, Sushant Sareen, who's a senior fellow at ORF, Dr. Mohsen Ali, a renowned freedom fighter of Bangladesh in 1971. Thank you so much, Dr. Ali. And I'm also joined in by Salauddin Shoaib Chaudhry, a renowned Bangladesh journalist. Thank you so much to all of you for joining in. Dr. Mohsen Ali, if I may begin with you, I think you're the best person to comment on the kind of Islamization we are seeing. Much credit is offered to Sheikh Hasina for cracking down on the hardliners, especially the ones who were also in the opposition. But was enough done? What explains the sudden burst of these
for inviting me into your program. Yes, we know what's going on in Bangladesh now, and Sheikh Hasina was the right person to run Bangladesh situation, and during her tenure and from 2009 to 2024 middle, so there is no Islamization, there is no terrorism. There are some occasional terrorism, but Sheikh Hasina fixed all those, and Bangladesh was enjoying the golden period, golden time during her regime and during her rule. And Bangladesh has got tremendous development during her time that Bangladesh never saw before. But after her ousted, for last about 15 months, 16 months, Bangladesh is going down all the way to the Pakistan level. And Pakistan is very deeply involved in Bangladesh from middle of last year, because they want Bangladesh back into the Pakistani fold, like as East Pakistan or a confederation with Pakistan, because Pakistan wanted another front against India, so that Pakistan can fight out India from east and from west, both sides. That's why they're making this the military pact, like Saudi Arabia that you just explained, and these militants are trained by trained by Pakistan, because the IS style, the Khilafat style government they want to install in Bangladesh under the leadership of Jamaat Islami. And there are a lot of the militant groups in Bangladesh, and all are under Jamaat Islami, and Jamaat Islami wanted to
India has just signed another big trade deal, this time with New Zealand. It's been called a major breakthrough. The deal was concluded in just 9 months, and it's expected to double the volume of trade between India and New Zealand in just 5 years. For New Zealand, tariffs are being reduced for over 95% of their exports, and for India, exporters will get duty-free access to New Zealand. Plus, there's a promise of investment. New Zealand wants to invest $20 billion in India, although New Delhi has drawn some red lines. Dairy and farm products are off the table in this deal. Now, this is India's third major trade agreement of the year. The first two deals were with the UK and Oman. And the aim is clear. As talks with the US remain deadlocked, New Delhi is ramping up conversations with other partners. Here's a report.
India has signed another trade pact, this time with New Zealand. And it's being called a historic breakthrough. The deal was announced today. It took just 9 months of negotiations. The goal is to double trade between the two nations in 5 years. Right now, bilateral merchandise trade stands at $1.3 billion. But that could grow quickly, because this deal makes the majority of goods trade duty-free. Let's break down the numbers. New Zealand will eliminate or reduce tariffs on 95% of its exports to India. Nearly 57% of these products will become duty-free from day one. In return, India will get zero duty market access for all its exports to New Zealand. That includes textiles, gems and jewelry, handicrafts, engineering goods, leather, footwear, and even cars.
When New Zealand businesses can sell more, they grow, and when they grow, they hire more people, and that creates opportunities right across the country. More jobs and higher wages for Kiwis. Trade already supports 1 in 4 New Zealand jobs, and this deal strengthens that even further, because it backs our farmers, our growers, our manufacturers, and our exporters to compete and win on the world stage.
There's more. New Zealand has promised to invest $20 billion in India. This will happen over the next 15 years. The investment will also support mobility, meaning Indian professionals, skilled workers and students could find it easier to live and work in New Zealand. India's Commerce Minister called this a trade deal built around people. A chance for Indian youth and businesses to learn, work and grow on the global stage.
It's a win-win agreement, and I can assure the people of India that under Prime Minister Narendra Modi's very, very focused approach, we are negotiating free trade agreements and comprehensive partnerships strategically.
But there are red lines. India has refused to give market access to some key items. This includes dairy, milk, cheese, yogurt, onions, sugar, edible oils, spices, and rubber. Why? To protect Indian farmers and the domestic industry. New Delhi has made this very clear. Only ingredients that will be re-exported, like some dairy components, will be allowed in. But on the other side, India has agreed to drop tariffs on sheep meat, wool, coal, and most forestry exports. These are all key export sectors for New Zealand. And they'll now benefit from cheaper access to the Indian market. This is India's third major trade deal this year. The first was with the UK in July. The second with Oman last week. And now, New Zealand. It's part of a broader strategy. India is diversifying its export base, especially after the US imposed steep tariffs. Indian exports to the US dropped sharply in September and October, a decline of 12% and 8.5% respectively. November showed some recovery, up by over 22%. But the larger concern remains over-dependence on the US. The 50% tariffs on Indian exports still remain in place. India and US are negotiating a trade deal, but so far, progress has been slow. So New Delhi is moving fast to tap into other markets. This deal also brings long-term benefits. It creates a stable trade framework. It reduces input costs for manufacturers. It offers policy certainty. And most importantly, it builds long-term economic resilience. India is making a clear shift from short-term transactional partnerships to long-term strategic trade alliances. And this agreement with New Zealand is the latest proof of that vision.
In Japan, a nuclear power plant has triggered a major debate. It is the world's biggest plant. 15 years ago, there was a major nuclear accident here and the plant was shut down. Now, Japan is preparing to restart it. And that decision has stirred a debate. The plant is called the Kashiwazaki Kariwa. It is located in the Niigata prefecture, which is on Japan's western coast. It is about 220 kilometers northwest of Tokyo. It's a massive facility. This plant has 7 nuclear reactors and a total capacity of over 8,000 megawatts. This makes it the largest nuclear power plant in the world. It is run by a company called TEPCO, that's short for Tokyo Electric Power Company. It is the same company that operated the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear plant. So why is this move controversial? To understand that, we need to go back to the year 2011. That's when Japan was hit by a powerful earthquake. It triggered a massive tsunami. Waves swept across Japan's coast and they hit a nuclear power plant. That plant was Fukushima Daiichi. The tsunami knocked out power, cooling systems failed, and several reactors melted down. So radioactive material leaked. It was very dangerous. It has become one of the worst nuclear accidents in modern history. And the impact was immediate and far-reaching. More than 160,000 people were forced to leave their homes. Entire towns were emptied and large areas were declared unsafe. That disaster shook public trust. It forced Japan to change course on nuclear power. So Tokyo created a new and independent nuclear regulator. It also introduced stronger safety rules. And it shut down all of its nuclear power plants, including this one. Now, to give you some context, Japan has 33 operable nuclear power reactors. They are spread across the country. But after the Fukushima accident in 2011, all these plants remained offline. Until then, nuclear power supplied about 30% of Japan's electricity. But after the shutdown, after the plants were shut, that power was no longer available and Japan had to find alternatives. So Tokyo turned to fossil fuels. Japan began importing coal and gas. And over time, this dependence became a problem. It also came at a cost. Last year alone, Japan spent about $68 billion on energy imports. It also raised concerns over energy security in Japan. At the same time, the demand for electricity began to rise because data centers expanded and AI-related infrastructure grew. This is when nuclear power returned to the discussion. Slowly and cautiously, over the past decade, Japan has brought some nuclear reactors back online. The government says the country needs stable power. And as part of that approach, 14 reactors have been restarted. None of them were operated by TEPCO, until now that is. In recent weeks, a key hurdle was cleared. Local authorities have backed the restart plan for this bigger nuclear reactor in Niigata. Now, TEPCO is seeking a final approval from Japan's nuclear regulator. Once that comes, one reactor could restart as early as January. But this story is not just about power, it is also about trust. And that is where the resistance comes in. A new survey has been conducted. It shows that most residents are still unconvinced about the nuclear power plant. Many say conditions for a restart have not been met. Others say that they do not trust TEPCO.
There has been a tendency for many citizens to feel anxious. Recently, however, due to various PR campaigns and other factors, opinions have become more balanced again. Still, the greatest concern among local residents remains: what will happen if an accident occurs? The biggest worry is whether they will be able to evacuate.
Remember, the conversation is about restarting a nuclear power plant that was not part of the accident. This is not the Fukushima plant. This is the plant in Niigata. But it's operated by the same company that operated the Fukushima plant. And for some, these fears are personal. Former Fukushima residents now live in Niigata. They say the disaster is not over. Many people still cannot return home, and cleanup at Fukushima will take decades. But the company involved, TEPCO, says it has learned from the past. It points to new seawells, watertight doors, mobile generators, and regular safety drills. The company says restarting the plant is not the end goal. It calls it the start of a long process. So this is where Japan stands, caught between its energy needs and its nuclear scars. The question is not whether the reactors are safe. The question is whether the trust can be rebuilt. The Venezuela story is picking up. The US is raising the stakes. It is intensifying its blockade and targeting Venezuelan oil tankers. In the last few days, US forces have boarded 2 vessels, and now they're pursuing a third one. They've also struck 28 boats in the region and killed more than 100 people. Trump started off by calling it an operation against Venezuelan drug cartels. But it's increasingly clear that this is about oil and regime change. Washington is trying to choke Venezuela's oil revenues and destabilize the regime of Nicolas Maduro. So will America start a war in Venezuela? The US president, in his own words, does not rule out the possibility. His forces are rapidly escalating operations on the high seas, and this could have far-reaching consequences in the region. Here's a report.
Over the weekend, the waters of the Caribbean witnessed a chase. A U.S. ship was hunting down an oil tanker. The name of that vessel? Bella 1. It was heading to Venezuela, apparently to pick up oil. American officials say it's flying a false flag. That means it's pretending to be from one country, but really operating from another. That's a red flag. And it gives the U.S. legal room to act. So, Bella 1 was in the crosshairs. The U.S. Coast Guard tried to intercept the tanker, but the ship managed to flee to the Atlantic Ocean. But the American military remains very much in the region. The U.S. has been targeting ships like this since early December. Earlier, it had intercepted 2 other tankers, the Skipper and the Centuries. Both were stopped over links to sanctioned oil. But this isn't just about one ship or one country. This is about building pressure. President Donald Trump is ramping it up. He's ordered a full-scale blockade of Venezuela. Sanctioned ships will be intercepted, one by one. What is Trump's goal? To cut off Nicolas Maduro's cash pipe, to block Venezuela from exporting its oil. Without exports, Venezuela has a problem. Storage tanks will overflow, oil wells will be shut, and money stops flowing. That's America's strategy, and President Donald Trump is pushing it hard. In fact, he isn't ruling anything out. The U.S. president was asked directly, "Will there be a war over Venezuela?" Trump said, "I don't rule it out." Those are strong words. The U.S. military is already in the region. The Trump administration has struck 28 boats. Over 100 people have died, some in controversial drone strikes. Venezuela is trying to push back. It's now using its navy to escort tankers. It's warning the U.S. to back off.
Al gobierno norteamericano y a su presidente.
We tell the U.S. government and its president that we are not intimidated by their crude and arrogant threats, that Bolivar himself and many other heroes of American emancipation taught us to fight and defeat powerful empires, and that the dignity of this homeland is not negotiable and will not be intimidated by anyone.
The U.S. wants to stop the flow of crude and force Maduro out. But Venezuela sees it as an invasion of its waters. The risk is growing. One wrong move or signal, and it could become a real confrontation. In Washington, the pressure is building. Trump has made it clear he's not letting these tankers through. So here's the big question. Is this just about oil? Or is it the start of something bigger?
For our next story, let me tell you about a miracle. Not the kind where the blind see or the sick walk or water turns into wine. This is a different kind of miracle. The kind where you lose a military battle, then declare victory, and then for good measure credit it to divine intervention. Of course, I'm talking about Pakistan. Their Supreme Commander recently addressed a conference. Army Chief plus Chief of Defence Forces General Asim Munir. He was talking in Islamabad and some of his comments have now come out. Listen to what he said first.
If Allah helps you, none can overcome you. We felt divine help.
Asim Munir said Pakistan won the military conflict with India and they did it with some help. According to him, it was divine intervention. Sounds more like a story of divine delusion because here are the facts. Pakistan-backed terrorists killed 26 civilians in India's Pahalgam. India responded with Operation Sindoor. It destroyed terror camps in Pakistan. Pakistan tried to hit back. India responded with attacks on Pakistan's military bases. Indian forces damaged Pakistani runways and destroyed their air defences. Islamabad was forced to sue for peace. It called India seeking a ceasefire. In other words, they did not retaliate their way to victory, they dialed their way to peace. And that's not divine intervention, that is damage control. Also, this was not the only bizarre comment from Asim Munir. He had to justify the divine intervention claim, so he said Pakistan was special. The world has 57 Islamic countries, but Asim Munir says Pakistan holds a special status because apparently God has a favourite geopolitical project and it's permanently IMF funded. And that's not all. He also said that Pakistan is the protector of Haram-e-Sharifin. This refers to the two holiest cities in Islam, the Mecca and the Medina. Last we checked, Saudi Arabia was their custodian, so this must be breaking news to Riyadh. Imagine waking up and finding out that Rawalpindi has taken over your holy sites spiritually.
Among them, God gave us the honor of being the protectors of Haramain-Sharifin.
And if you thought that's enough, I'm afraid it isn't. Asim Munir went on to say that only the state can declare jihad. Only the state can declare jihad. What does that mean? What Munir is basically trying to say is this. In Islam, armed jihad is not something that individuals or groups can announce on their own. Only a recognized state can do that. So terrorist groups have no authority, especially to fight in the name of religion. Quick question here. Then what exactly was Pakistan exporting for decades? Gig economy terror? Because it's no secret that Pakistan breeds terrorist groups. It sends them across the border and exports terror to the world. Who allowed that? Also, why is Munir saying all of this now? I guess the why is a very difficult question to ask when it comes to Pakistan. Why do they do anything at all is a trillion-dollar question. But this seems like an attempt to clean their image, to shape the narrative. It seems like Islamabad is gearing up for a new IMF bailout, so they're trying to project a terror-free image. But you see, terrorism is not like a blot on your t-shirt that you can dry clean. It's a snake that comes to bite you back. Like the TTP, the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan. They're fighting the Pakistani state and proving to be a security nightmare. Asim Munir says 70% of TTP fighters are Afghans. Let me get this straight. Pakistan was the first to recognize the Taliban. They supported them for decades. They helped them train and give them weapons. And now the chickens have come home to roost. So Pakistan has a problem. That's not counter-terrorism, that is buyer's remorse. So to sum it up, Pakistan loses a military conflict with India, it sues for peace, declares victory, credits divine intervention and tries to whitewash terrorism and blame it on the Afghans. Now that's not strategy, that's a multi-level marketing scheme of excuses. As for Asim Munir's miracle, if divine intervention really did show up, it certainly did not fix the runways or save the military bases. Because wars are not won by miracles, they are won by military edge and a clear vision. And Pakistan's call to India was not heavenly help, it was earthly embarrassment. Our next story is about Denmark. The country is ending a 400-year-old tradition. Its National Postal Service will stop delivering letters. The last letter will go out at the end of this month. But why is Denmark ending this service? The reason is quite simple. People are not writing anymore. Letter volumes have collapsed by 90%. Digital messages have taken over and online shopping has changed what postal services are used for. Denmark will now focus more on parcels. Officials say that is where the demand is. And interestingly, this is not just a Danish story. Countries across the world are grappling with the same shift. Here's a report.
For more than 4 centuries, a national postal service has connected Denmark. Letters moved across towns and cities. Official notices, personal messages, all carried on paper. That system is now stopping. At the end of this year, Denmark's state-run postal service, PostNord, will deliver its final letter. Denmark's postal system has operated since 1624. Now, after 400 years, it is ending letter delivery. The reason is structural. People no longer send letters. Over the past 25 years, letter volumes in Denmark have fallen by more than 90%. They have dropped from about 1.4 billion a year to just over 100 million. PostNord says the letter business is no longer profitable. Denmark is one of the most digitalized countries in the world. Bank statements are electronic. Bills arrive online. Official communication is sent through a digital system. But as letters decline, parcel services are rising. Online shopping continues to grow. PostNord says its future lies in logistics and e-commerce deliveries. But the shift has consequences. Around 1,500 jobs will be lost. Red postboxes are being removed from streets across the country, and letters still matter to some. Reports say 271,000 people rely on physical mail. This includes elderly residents and patients receiving hospital appointments or care decisions. Letters will not disappear entirely, though. Private company Dow will continue delivering them. But posting a letter will be less convenient, and it will cost more. Denmark's shift is part of a global story. Across Europe, traditional mail volumes have declined sharply. La Poste in France has reportedly seen a 70% drop in letter volumes in the past 2 decades. Canada Post has cut back home deliveries as mail volumes fall and costs rise. The Universal Postal Union's latest reports show letter mail collapsing worldwide, even as parcel delivery grows. Postal operators are adapting. Some are focusing on e-commerce logistics. Others are offering digital services or diversifying into financial products. Yet the picture is not one-sided. In many developing countries, postal services remain essential. They deliver welfare payments, banking services, or identity documents. Even in Denmark, physical letters have not vanished completely. Research shows younger people send more letters than other age groups, often as a deliberate choice. A physical message in a digital world. Officials say the change is practical, not symbolic. Letters can still be sent, just through a different system. But after 400 years, Denmark is closing a chapter, one that reflects a wider shift in how the world communicates.
This is News 18 Network. India's largest news network.
Evening, Deepak Vora, former diplomat, is with us. Also with us is Major General Dhruv Katoch, Director, India Foundation. Brahma Chalani, Strategic Affairs expert, joins us, and also joining us is Salahuddin Shoaib Chaudhry, who's a Bangladeshi journalist. Salahuddin, I'd begin with you. You would be the best person to explain to us what you see happening in Bangladesh so far that seem to have been cited by the protesting crowds. What are they exactly blaming India
against India that's already in the making? In a CNN News 18 exclusive news break, we've learned that Bangladesh is eyeing a Saudi-style pact with Pakistan. So Pakistan and Bangladesh will be working on mutual defense agreement. The proposal has already been discussed at top diplomatic military levels. Joint mechanism has been formed to draft agreement as Dhaka's military is keen on a strategic defense pact. Multiple rounds of military-level talks have been held, and Army, Air Force, Navy chiefs of both nations have met repeatedly. Several military MOUs have already been signed. The draft is likely after Bangladesh general elections to be taking place. Now, this entire reset in ties is taking place rapidly after Sheikh Hasina's ouster. We are also learning that Pakistan is in talks with 8 countries on similar pacts. What bearing will this have on New Delhi? Let's deep dive, and for that, let me introduce my guests today. I'm joined in by Ambassador Veena Sikri, who's a former Indian High Commissioner to Bangladesh, Sushant Sareen, who's a senior fellow at ORF, Dr. Mohsen Ali, a renowned freedom fighter of Bangladesh in 1971. Thank you so much, Dr. Ali. And I'm also joined in by Salauddin Shoaib Chaudhry, a renowned Bangladesh journalist. Thank you so much to all of you for joining in. Dr. Mohsen Ali, if I may begin with you, I think you're the best person to comment on the kind of Islamization we are seeing. Much credit is offered to Sheikh Hasina for cracking down on the hardliners, especially the ones who were also in the opposition. But was enough done? What explains the sudden burst of these hardliners now running amok?
Yeah, hi, good morning from New York. Thank you very much for inviting me into your program. Yes, we know what's going on in Bangladesh now, and Sheikh Hasina was the right person to run Bangladesh situation. And during her tenure, and from 2009 to 2024 middle,
has anti-India hate been now normalized? Is India now vulnerable as it's never been on its Eastern Front? Has India's Eastern Front policy completely failed? Those are the questions we are going to pose tonight. But viewers, let's open this up, because I want to speak to somebody. I want to speak to somebody called Rokia Prachi, Bangladesh's national award-winning writer who is living in exile. And she's going to tell us a few things that are going to shock us, viewers. Ms. Prachi, thank you for joining us. You allege, and I'm quoting you, a strategic plan, unquote, behind the violence in Bangladesh, this outrageous free run to Islamists. What specific actions or signals convince you that the interim government is enabling rather than containing Islamist forces that are anti-India palpably on the streets? Can you explain to our viewers tonight?
Thank you so much. Thank you. Actually, in the first place, the interim government released from jail lots of Islamist terrorists who were convicted of murder and terror acts. Ansarullah Bangla team chief Ansarullah, chief name is Jashimuddin Rahmani.
Rahmani, yes.
He is not only released but provided a helicopter to attend the funeral of his close relatives. All those radicals are used to organize mobs who are attacking not only Aum Leaguers but also all progressive person opposing them.
"2025 is almost over, and if you scroll back through your phone, you'll notice something different. Our social media timelines did not just show real life, they reimagined it. Photos turned into Ghibli-style scenes, people became action figures, some even hugged their younger selves. Labubu dolls became an obsession, and matcha turned into a daily ritual. Many of these moments were powered by artificial intelligence, but others came from culture. Together, they shaped our timelines this year. Here's a look back at the viral trends of 2025.
Social media often tells us what people are thinking. In 2025, it also showed us what people were imagining. Timelines were no longer just photographs, they became interpretations. Some were shaped by artificial intelligence, others came from culture, taste, and habit. Together, they defined the year online. Let's take a look. One of the most visible trends was Ghibli-style imagery. Ghibli refers to the visual style of a famous Japanese animation studio. In 2025, everyday photos were reimagined in that style. Homes looked warmer, cities looked calmer, and ordinary moments felt animated. The trend spread rapidly after ChatGPT introduced native image generation. It allowed users to create these images with simple text prompts. What had once required artistic skill suddenly became accessible to anyone. Another trend took a very different shape. People turned themselves into action figures, boxed, labeled, styled like collectibles. This became known as the nano banana trend. It was powered by Google's Gemini image tools. The goal was to create toy-like versions of real people. The images looked hyper-real, often close enough to resemble real merchandise. Public figures joined in, and so did everyday users. It sparked conversations about identity and self-image. This year, one trend was called Hug My Younger Self. People shared images of themselves embracing their childhood versions. These are moments that never happened, but they felt deeply personal and rewrote memories. Soon after, another trend pushed that idea further. AI was used to add deceased parents or relatives into photographs. Weddings were rewritten, family portraits were restored. For some, the images offered comfort. For others, they raised ethical questions. The response was divided, but the emotional impact was undeniable. But not every viral moment in 2025 was driven by technology. Labubu became a global internet sensation. It's a designer toy character known for wide eyes and a mischievous smile. In 2025, the character exploded across social media. Gen Z users began treating Labubu as a collectible and a fashion accessory. It appeared in outfit reels, desk setups, and lifestyle posts. Limited edition versions sold out quickly. Resale prices surged online. Celebrities also joined the trend. What started as a toy became a global cultural moment. Another trend that went viral was matcha. Matcha is a powdered green tea from Japan. In 2025, it flooded social media feeds around the world. Short videos showed bright green drinks being whisked and poured. Cafes featured it in reels and posts, and it turned into a daily ritual for many users. These moments show how online spaces evolved this year. As 2025 comes to a close, the internet tells its own story. One shaped by imagination and choice.
I'm sure you've seen the frenzy around the Epstein files. Some of it was released by the US government recently, some of the data, and immediately there was a problem. A lot of the documents were redacted. Some pages were fully blacked out with 1 or 2 lines revealed. And this set off speculation. What were these redactions trying to hide? Who were they protecting? The internet got creative with the answers.
Hello and welcome to the late night edition with me, Ayushman Singh Jamal. Big breaking news coming in at the top of the bulletin, where amid tensions between India and Bangladesh with the rise of Islamist forces inside the nation, Muhammad Yunus held talks with the US ambassador to India and the special envoy to South and Central Asia, Sergio Gore, over the phone. Both sides also discussed the death of student leader Osman Hadi, the flashpoint that has unleashed a wave of Islamist terror across Bangladesh. The discussion, which lasted